I applied for the job on a whim. It was one of dozens of government listings. Anything that paid better than what I was making most of them, I barely remembered applying for. So when I got the email back, I had to reread it twice. Patient supervisor, private mental facility. Salary, higher than expected, almost 4 times higher. I accepted before I could talk myself out of it. A few days later, a letter arrived. No company branding, just an address, a time, and brief instructions. Report to Bradley Silly. Role: patient supervisor. I pulled into the parking lot for my first day yesterday. It was a gray Friday morning, and the sun was just starting to emerge, casting an orange glow over the large building. From the outside, it was exactly what you'd expect: brick walls, tall fences, cameras, tight security. The kind of place you don't accidentally wander into. John? A man in his late 50s stood there in a dark blue uniform. "I'm Bradley," he said, shaking my hand. "You're taking over from me." He glanced up at the building and sighed. 30 years and I'm done. This time next week, I'll be on a beach with the missus, cocktail in hand. I chuckled as we walked inside. The moment I stepped through the glass doors, I stopped. The inside didn't match the outside at all. Polished floors, purple carpet, marble reception desk. Quiet and very expensive looking. It looked more like a hotel than an asylum. No shouting or chaos to be seen anywhere. "Most patients are still asleep," Bradley said, as if reading my thoughts. "You'll see more later." I followed him down the hall. The metal doors at the end had been wedged open with a shoe. He pulled them open and they slid apart. "Your job's simple," he began. "You get assigned 1 patient a week. Follow them. Observe. Report anything concerning..." "Like what?" He shrugged. "Honestly, nothing ever really happens." I raised an eyebrow skeptically. Just then, a door opened and a young man stepped out in a bathrobe with a coffee in his hand. He couldn't have been older than early 30s. He had dark hair, still damp like he'd just taken a shower. He looked confident and relaxed. He smiled when he spotted us. "Morning." I leaned slightly toward Bradley. "Is he staff?" Bradley shook his head. "Patient." I stared. The man approached, eyes flicking briefly to Bradley. For a split second, he looked confused. Then Bradley grinned. The man's expression snapped back into place, as if a switch was flipped. He smiled again and held out his hand. "Tavian," he said. "Call me Tav. Good to meet you," I hesitated. Bradley chuckled, and Tav laughed. "Oh, come on," Tav said. "I'm not going to rip your arm off. I started. "Not all of us are running around in straitjackets, you know," he added casually. "This isn't Arkham." Bradley snorted. "Right," I muttered, shaking his hand. His grip was firm. When lunch came around, we entered the cafeteria. It looked more like a mini Michelin-star restaurant than a hospital lunch hall, the kind of place that served a droplet of food in the middle of a huge plate. Bradley sat with the patients, not near them with them at their table. I followed hesitantly and sat opposite him as the other patients filed in. Tav slid into the seat next to him, and a few others joined their side of the table. Tav was now dressed in a sleek black Nike running top and joggers, like he'd just finished a morning workout. "So," Bradley began, "what did you do before this, John?" "Office job," I said. "Admin." "Ah, the 9 to 5, said Tav nonchalantly, cutting into his steak. "Used to work in insurance, I get it." Just then, a young blonde woman sat beside me. She looked between me and Bradley curiously for a second, then a smile spread across her face as she turned to me. "Bryony," she said, offering her hand. "You the new supervisor?" I nodded, shaking it. She was wearing an Apple Watch. She glanced at Tav across the table, and they grinned at each other briefly. I noticed it, but I didn't understand it. Then she turned back to me. "Someone's got to replace him," she added, looking towards Bradley. "He's getting old." Everyone laughed, and the conversation drifted to Bradley's retirement plans. It felt far too normal, like lunch with coworkers, not mental patients. The tour with Bradley continued after lunch. Doctors in white coats nodded at us politely. I wasn't even sure who was a patient or who was staff. There were no gowns, no medication carts, no restraints. The common room had a fireplace and a huge plasma screen TV. Just people lounging around and chatting. It felt like a resort. By the end of the day, I didn't know what to think. Bradley handed me a folder and a small remote with a red button on it. "Schedules, protocols," he said. "Any issues, press the button and staff will come running. Not that you'll need it." Then he looked around the place and sighed. "Well, I'm out." He reached into his pocket. Then he paused. "Left my badge at home on my last day." "Brilliant." I shrugged and handed him mine. "Here," I said. "Ah, thanks." Bradley swiped it on the door and handed it back to me, then gave me a salute and left. Across the room, Tav and Brioni were watching, amused. They probably just found it funny he'd forgotten his badge, I thought. I headed to the locker room to grab my things. The moment I stepped inside, the smell hit me immediately, metallic and pungent. I gagged, covering my mouth. What the hell was that? The lockers looked like they were pushed out further than they were this morning. I stepped closer and looked behind them. And then I saw it. A body was wedged between the lockers and the wall. One arm twisted beneath him, fingers stiff and curled. His dark blue uniform was soaked through. Blood was smeared across the metal drag marks, like he'd been forced into the gap after it was over. I screamed and pushed the button. The alarm sounded and staff rushed in, crowding around the body. The director glanced down into the gap. Then he looked up at me slowly. "Who let you in this morning?" he asked quietly. Everyone was silent. "B. Bradley," I said. He pointed at the body. "That is Bradley." Laughter erupted behind me. I turned around. The patients were crying with laughter. Tav was covering his face, and Brainy was almost in tears. The director took a tablet from security and started watching the footage. As he saw me handing the security badge to the man in the blue uniform, his expression darkened, then his face turned red. "That," he said slowly, "is not Bradley. That's Ed." My stomach dropped. "You just let a patient walk out." He looked up at me slowly, irate, his face twisted in fury. "You had one job," he snapped. "One job, you stupid government buffoon." The laughter behind me grew even louder. "That's not," I stammered, mortified. I was just with. "Did he even give you a uniform?" he yelled. My face burned as the realization dawned. "Come on, director, he's just a baby," Bryony said sweetly. "You're gonna make him cry." "Government wage slave," someone else snorted. "What did you expect?" The director turned to them. "You think this is funny? You want this place shut down? Relax. We just wanted to see if Ed could pull it off." Tav smirked. "Didn't think anyone would be that stupid. At least he gets you tax deductions." I stood there shaking. Not only did no one seem to care that there was a dead body behind the lockers, but now I was being violently berated by my boss, who I'd just met on my first day at a new job. In front of an entire facility of mental patients who were joining in and had all known that another patient was pretending to be a dead staff member for an entire day right in front of me. The director waved a hand at security, who started pulling the body out. "Dispose of it," the director muttered. "Call legal." He shoved a uniform into my hands and glared at me like I was scum, then stormed out. The crowd dispersed, leaving me in mortified silence. Then the janitor walked in with a bucket and mop and began cleaning like it was routine. "What the hell is wrong with this place?" I muttered. "You," he said nonchalantly. I blinked. Excuse me?" He leaned on his broom. "No one filled you in," he said. "No one here's actually insane. They just had lawyers good enough to dodge death row with an insanity plea." My mouth went dry. "They all ended up here?" I asked shakily. He exhaled, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Money talks. Same circles, same connections. They bankroll this place. Keep it quiet. You're the only part they can't get rid of government requirement." The door opened again, and I flinched. Tav entered and smiled at the janitor, ignoring me completely. "Hey," he said to the janitor. "How's the wife?" "Good," the janitor said, smiling. They shook hands, and Tav passed a folded bill into his. "Take her out somewhere nice." The janitor pocketed it and chuckled with a grateful nod of appreciation. Tav grabbed something from a locker and left. Didn't look at me once. So now, I'm the joke. In a facility full of people smart and connected enough to get away with the worst things imaginable. I don't know how I'm gonna go back there on Monday. God help me.